Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Asana Ketana. Good morning.
And thank you for joining us this morning. All right. Last day of the month, first day of the week.
It is the 5th Monday in the month of May. And it's end of month time, you know. A lot of people are out and about this weekend. I guess most people were paid going into the end of the month. And quite a lot of activity buzzing.
Yeah,
people are traveling,
so.
people are in and about the city, you know. Activity is happening, Marlene.
That's right. It is also the end of our official safe zone. We are entering into the hurricane season starting tomorrow. The 2021 hurricane season, Atlantic hurricane season, is predicted to be above average. We had some extended conversations last week with NEMO and the Met Service to talk about what we can expect here in the preparations that have been going on.
Yeah. I think what is key to all of this is the level of preparedness at the individual level. When I say individual, I'm speaking by family, right? For the next 6 months, we're going to be in the hurricane season, so it is on us to be able to prepare in the event that we do experience some kind of weather event.
Yeah, right. And we know it only takes one storm to come our way that can have devastating effects. Last year we saw those floods from Eta and Iota, and they didn't even pass, those storms didn't even pass over us. They just caused so much rain that we had those floods.
I could recall the images from that deluge in the Cayo district. I mean, you could think of Roaring Creek being underwater, and you would think that that is, you know, an area where you'd fairly be safe in terms of the elevation of the land, no? Yeah.
Absolutely. So that is, of course, a reminder for today. It is never too late to get those plans in place, and that means starting with your family, talking about what needs to be done, what has to be collected, and maybe put aside in the event that we come under the threat of a storm. We're going to talk more about our weather in just a bit. We're going to get moving into our motivation for today, and that means it's time for Eye Opener. Our Eye Opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. Knowing where you come from helps bridge the gulf that divides your past from your future. Each of us is a piece of a larger puzzle. We're all born into the unique and complex network of individuals, settings, and circumstances that constitute our heritage. Whether or not you are aware of your ancestors, the cultural history of your people, or the trials faced by the people responsible for bringing you into the world, these forces have had a hand in shaping your values. In researching our individual histories, however, we may encounter relatives who made interesting choices or were involved in traumatic events. It's easy to overestimate the importance of these pieces of our past and to cling to them. While your heritage has influenced the development of the person you are today, you are more than an ethnicity, a culture, or a family name. You should not feel driven to alter your likes and dislikes, dreams, preferences, or values because you feel your heritage demands it. Knowing your history is about loving who you are, understanding where you've come from, and preparing for your future.
I like this one simply because it's sort of a call for us to remain grounded. In life, we take different paths, some of us become extremely successful, and some of us are the proverbial rose that grew out of the concrete, right? And so that one always has to keep in mind the humble origins, if that were the case. So you have to remember where you're coming from, your past, what your history has been, in order for you to be able to fully accept and embrace where you are in the present, and of course to look ahead to the future. When I look at my trajectory in that manner of speaking, I am proud to come from St. Martin's, Lake Independence, right? And my childhood, my coming of age as an adult, all of those experiences were shared with the people of that community. And I always tell myself, you know what, it doesn't matter how high I'm able to climb, I always remain rooted in the fact that I am one of them, and I'm proud to be one of them. And when you look at that, and then you look at the familial setting as well, while the eye-opener says, well, it's more than just being an ethnicity, being a culture, or what have you, those are the very tenets that help you to understand how far along you've come. Like I am Garifuna, right? And so I am proud of being who I am. I understand the history of the people and everything that has me here. But to be able to do that and to have that appreciation of who you are as a person allows you then to be able to say, you know what, it doesn't matter where I go from here. Yeah. I know and I'm firmly rooted in where I come from. Yeah. And that's what makes the eye-opener special to me individually.
No, I do love it, and I love it for two reasons. The first one being what you pointed out, being aware and accepting as well as acknowledging where you come from. And that can be based on your cultural heritage, it can be based on how you grew up and the value systems you may have had. And those include, of course, the challenges that you face. But it's also, I think, a really great reminder that where you come from and all these other things that build up who you are historically don't dictate who you're going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful message. And I think it ties right in exactly to what you're talking about. Sometimes we use circumstances to define us. And it's an easy trap to fall into, you know. I have this particular background, that particular background. And it is important at times to recognize the level of choice that you have in moving forward, and whether or not you will let that entirely shape who you are, or you will make decisions to be able to alter what your future can be.
Yeah. Well, decision making is always one of those things where you have to consider all the factors that will shape the outcome of the action you're about to take. And so if you look at everything that will ultimately influence the decision, it's quite a lot to deal with. And at times it can be overwhelming, but you know, being able to, as you said, you know, separate certain things in order to be able to simply look and focus on what's coming ahead.
There's always a lot of talk now, and you always see quite a bit of articles popping up about, you know, there comes a point in your life, for example, where you stop blaming your parents for who you are. And I think that's, you know, that's one of the simple examples that we can all understand, because maybe not everyone has done the cultural dive, especially in a melting pot like Belize, where we're all very mixed. You know, we don't all take that cultural dive, but sometimes we look back to how we were raised, what happened in school, experiences we had there, and we use that as our crutch moving forward. But there comes a point where you do have to take some level of acceptance and say, okay, that took place, but I can shape what happens from here.
Well, there's an inevitable course as well that's difficult to steer away from, right?
All right. And that is our eye-opener for this morning, and we're going to shift gears into our weather update for today. And we have Angelia Guy on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm good, and you?
Not too bad. It looks like it's shaping up to be a beautiful day today.
Yes.
All right. So tell us about what we can expect.
Okay, well, we can expect fair and warm weather conditions over the area under a light easterly airflow.
All right. And so what's our 24-hour forecast?
Okay, we expect skies to be mostly sunny today and then partly cloudy tonight, with showers or thunderstorms being generally brief and isolated.
All right. And the winds?
Okay, winds will be generally from the east at 5 to 15 knots.
Now let's talk about our temperatures for today. How warm is it going to be?
Okay, temperatures will continue warm, similar like the past couple of days, with high temperatures reaching about 88 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 95 inland, and 82 in the hills.
All right, and for tonight?
Tonight, the low temperatures will range from 81 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 73 inland, and 68 in the hills.
Okay. So what can we expect in the next few days?
We expect continuing generally fair and warm weather with isolated showers or isolated thunderstorms.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome.
You have a great day today.
Thank you, you too.
All right.
Great weather ahead. More great weather.
That's right. We want it to continue that way, fair.
Yeah.
All right, and of course, with our weather out of the way, it is time for us to shift gears to Eye on the News.
Friday was quite a whirlwind in terms of events that were taking place in and around the country, Marlene. And so I wanted to sort of take the moment to unpack some of what transpired on Friday. There was the House meeting. There was the demonstration by the teachers outside of the Assembly building. There was also the unfortunate death of Superintendent Henry Jemoth. And so there was a lot. There was a lot of chatter. There was a lot that we had to cover in our newscast. And, you know, certain things perhaps weren't given the level of attention or detail as we ordinarily would had there not been these many stories to cover. Now, first of all, I wanted to sort of focus on the reading through of the motion that now puts in place the 10% salary reduction for teachers and public officers. And so that took place on Friday in the House, where it was presented as a motion, and it was read through. And so the Minister of Public Service will now advise the Governor General, and you would know that this would perhaps be her first, we would say, a baptism by fire, so to speak, where this will be the first piece of document she will sign on to that brings into force the 10% salary reduction. And tying that to the fact that we understand that the Belize National Teachers Union and its membership have voted for the strike action to be called off at this point, right? This would bring to an end the longest industrial action taken by the unions in Belize as far as we know, right? And it will be interesting to see what happens going forward, but we do know that the 10% comes into effect as of the 1st of June. And so that is where we are at present with regards to the unions and with regards to the government.
You know, as we watch the images from Friday and we see the teachers and public servants out there in their protest as they have been over the past couple of weeks, I'm happy to see that it was a peaceful day.
Yeah.
And that they were able to demonstrate without any challenges. The early indications that we are getting from the consultation out of the unions, at least the BNTU, is that the majority of teachers, not all, but the majority, have decided to return to the classroom. I suspect, and this is all speculation, that the introduction of the bill in the House is also, you know, it's very symbolic. It shows that this is moving ahead, especially if the salary cut was a predominant issue for the individual union members, that this is kind of the nail in the coffin. It's going to proceed with that. And so that is a key factor, I think, to look at as to how things developed on Friday and also what we can expect from Monday. But we're definitely going to look forward to an update from the BNTU and the rest of the union as well. There's the APSSM to find out what their decision is moving forward, and the Public Service Union as well, which is Now, over the past few weeks, the membership they've grown to represent, I think the last number they told us was over 3,000 people.
Yeah.
So it is also a very large union that we need to find out from them what their move is now.
Speaking of the Public Service Union, there is a new president at the helm of the PSU.
That's right.
He is Dean Flowers, no stranger to the union movement. He was the first vice president under the leadership of Gerald Henry, who chose not to offer himself for candidacy a second term around. So the PSU is at a point where you've mentioned, Marlene, has grown its numbers. It's under new leadership now, and we're yet to see what happens going forward with the PSU.
Yeah.
I know we spoke with Dean Flowers towards the end of last week, and he had outlined some of the changes that he would want to see get done in the context of the salary cut situation and, of course, the good governance demands as well. So,
well, the PSU did put out a press release yesterday, and the results of the elections for the Public Service Union is that Dean Flowers is the president. The first vice president is Anissa Gonzalez. The second vice president is Philip Tate. The Secretary General is Tricia Perez, and the councilors are Agnes Novello and Amara Carrillo, and the trustee is Pablo Gonzalez. It also says that the PSU maintains the trade dispute with the government of Belize, and government of Belize, it is alive, and until such time that the impasse is resolved. So it's going to be an interesting week to see how this will take shape moving forward. We know at the PSU it's more difficult for them to have the visibility in numbers as we have seen with the teachers.
Quite an interesting state of affairs, Marlene. And so it's a wait and see. You know, I presume that to some extent there will be a transition with a new executive in place, while Dean Flowers is no stranger to the membership of the union. He comes in with his own vision as well, and that needs to be translated over the next few weeks for them to properly settle in.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So that's okay. So that's the first thing that we wanted to touch on this morning. The other one is the incident where the superintendent lost his life in San Pedro on Friday morning. We know that there is a person of interest in police custody, Jasmine Hartin, and we expect that charges will be preferred with the directive of the DPP. And so that's where we are. But the news of the incident itself, you know, sort of sent shockwaves across the country and in the international press as well, given the profile of both individuals, right? And so it's an unfortunate thing, and the police department is grieving the loss of one of its own, and they're tasked with having to investigate what transpired that led to the death of Superintendent Henry Jamoth. Yeah.
No, it is absolutely a tragic case, and I think all the circumstances around it is just fed into one, Superintendent Jamoth was extremely well known and liked in many communities. Very often when you have members of the police department who are leaders in different communities, they interact with so many people. People come to appreciate them for the work that they've done or the contributions that they've done. And I think that's been a big part of just all the sympathy we've been hearing in the loss of his life. But of course, the circumstances surrounding his death and the mystery there is one that everyone has been chiming in. I think this is pretty much the predominant conversation that people have been having over the weekend. What we do know so far is that Jasmine Hartin was detained for questioning. She was released after 48 hours and then re-detained for further questioning. As the Commissioner of Police pointed out on Friday, she was so far the only person who was identified to have been with Jamoth at the time of the shooting. And it is, of course, one of those things where she had requested the attorney to be with her to be able to talk with the police. And so far, what we know is that there should be charges laid on her maybe as early as today, but it is going to go to the DPP, and the DPP will decide whether this is a case of manslaughter, whether it's a murder, and that's what's yet to be seen. The international attention, I think, is no surprise. The close ties that Jasmine Harton has as the partner of Andrew Ashcroft, who is the son of Lord Ashcroft. The UK media, they were very much fishing around for information from Friday to find out what the connection was, and just to get further details. And we saw the media reports from all over the world over the weekend. It's the connections, I think, that really drives it. But secondly, it is just a strange case in itself.
I mean, waking up on Friday morning, speaking from the perspective of those of us in the media, you know, waking up on Friday morning to that kind of an information, either by text message or by email or what have you, to me was completely shocking. Like, you know, it's the last thing that one would have thought, you know, when you think of Henry Jemmott, because most of us know him. Like, I knew him personally, working with him in the police department, and you know, waking up to that on Friday morning, Henry Jemmott is dead. He got shot in San Pedro. Like, you know, it took a while for one to be able to process that. Notwithstanding the circumstances, as you've mentioned, that resulted in how he died. You know, I think we're still trying to come to terms with that.
Well, so the family at this point is saying that the autopsy is saying it's a homicide. We have not gotten the official police report on the autopsy as yet, but we do expect that we'd be hearing that today, especially since there's the usual police briefing, and we'll be able to get more details as to what the autopsy has revealed. That's a key part of moving forward. And I know that the commissioner dismissed certain tests, like the gunshot residue on Friday. I'm not sure if those things were actually conducted over the weekend as well. But one thing is for sure, there is a whole lot of scrutiny on the investigation process of this particular case. And, you know, I can understand that for the police department, it is personal. You know, this is one of their own. This is a fallen brother. And so that's going to be such a key part in ensuring and in moving forward, that they can collect the evidence so that they can be able to get justice for what took place.
Well, there's also a growing skepticism and cynicism from the public. When you look at the reaction of the public, and this is something you can't really steer away from, because people are talking and people are putting how they view the potential outcome of this, you know, and it's there. Like, some people are feeling a certain kind of way enough to be able to come forward and say how they feel with respect to what is taking place, and the pressure that is being brought to bear on the department to be able to proceed with the investigation as thoroughly as possible. Right, so those are the main things that we wanted to discuss this morning, Marlene. Obviously, there's a whole lot that will be covered going forward.
There is a lot. And of course, we will have a full update in our newscast tonight. We promise to be able to keep you updated during the day as well, if there are developments that are made, so that you can be up to date with what's happening. But that's it for us with Eye on the News. All right, and with that, we're going to get moving into our show. There's another big story that we missed there in Eye on the News, which is that the land borders are reopening for foreign travel. So I know that Belizeans were very excited when we heard that the land borders were reopening. Well, it's not for us. It's for tourists to come into the country. But there are concerns. So we are going to be having a conversation about what type of protocols are going to be taking place at the land borders. How can we ensure protection for those who will directly engage with the visitors coming in, and ensure that we maintain all the protocols necessary to keep the wider community safe from further spread of COVID-19? That's the extended conversation that we'll be having this morning.
Our second conversation immediately following that is an initiative to warn against unhealthy foods, and so we'll be discussing a front labeling campaign for manufacturers of canned foods and other stuff that is processed. That will be our second conversation this morning, Marlene.
All right, so that's what we have in store for you. We are going to go ahead and take a break, and but before we do, we got a birthday shout out, and today we are saying a happy, happy birthday to
Beth Sanchez. There she is. Happy birthday, Beth.
All right, that comes from all of us here at Channel 5 and Open Your Eyes. We'll take that break now, and when we come back, we'll be joined by the CEO of the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, site manager for Benque Border, and other representatives of the tourism sector. That's coming up, so stay tuned.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Hi, I am Rosana Briceño. I am happy to see that the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine has begun all over our nation. If we are to get back to some kind of normalcy, if our golden citizens will be better protected, and if our children are to go back to school, then we need to get vaccinated. I believe in the COVID-19 vaccine, and when my turn comes around, I will get vaccinated. I urge you to take it too. Hashtag Get Vaccinated Belize.
It is my time
to protect your life.
Don't wait to vaccinate.
I believe in the COVID-19 vaccine.
The vaccine is the best way to protect lives.
Don't wait, vaccinate.
Don't hesitate, Belize.
Vaccinate. Be COVID.
Where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Welcome back. We begin our first conversation of the day with a panel of 3 persons who are representing the Ministry of Tourism and, of course, the Benque Viejo border. We have with us this morning the Chief Executive Officer in the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, Nicole Solano. Good morning, CEO.
Good morning, Sunny. Good morning, Marlene.
We also have with us the Chief Tourism Officer, Abel Castaneda. Good morning, Abel.
Good morning, Isani and Marlene.
And finally, we have with us Javier Gutierrez. He's the site manager at the Benque border. Good morning, Javier.
Good morning, Isani. Good morning, Marlene.
All right, so the opening of the land borders is quite an interesting situation because there are concerns abound with respect to how we're going to go about doing this in the most effective way. Perhaps we can begin with the CEO to give us an explanation as to how we arrived at agreeing upon the reopening of the border in the days ahead. Kindly begin for us, CEO.
Thanks, Isani. Yes, I want to begin by saying that the borders are not closed. The borders have been open since last year. And today we're really excited to be able to be adding in another layer and another element of arrivals, and that would be for tourists only. That's a decision that we've been trying to come to for many months. The airport has been open since October, and we've been looking at the possibility of opening the land borders, since December, January, all the way through. We've been talking about opening seaports. We've been talking about revising and reviewing and evolving what is happening at the airport. So the conversation of opening ports is not one that just started, it's one that's been on the way. So we're excited as a team to be at the point today where we can add for tourists. As you know, the free zone has been open, and there's a lot of activity, especially in the northern border. And today we're able to welcome tourists again, so we're really excited and happy about that.
So
Let's talk a bit, because being able to understand why this move is necessary, it's also to put into perspective the flow of tourism that would come from land borders. And that would include through Benque, through the northern border, and also those who come in from boats and head out maybe directly to the islands.
Exactly.
So what's the typical flow? What do we expect?
Okay, so border management handles the 4 border points: the western border in Benque, the northern border in Santa Elena, in San Pedro as well, and in Punta Gorda. The San Pedro and the Punta Gorda borders are seaports, no? They're not land borders as the north and the west, as you know. So what we've decided to do is to open first the land borders, and then depending on how that works, we move to the next level of opening. We now call it, there are 3 phases of opening. So you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. In phase 1, we have 1A, which would be the land borders, and 1B, the San Pedro and the Punta Gorda. So we're focusing first on Benque and Santa Elena.
When this decision was being made, I gather that you guys were in close consultation with the Ministry of Health. Were there any concerns that were raised in respect of how we're going to go about doing this? And what perhaps were some of those concerns?
Yes, the conversation with health in particular, but also with immigration, customs, Baja. In the case of San Pedro and Punta Gorda, the Port Authority, there's been ongoing conversation and ongoing back and forth as to what would be the best way to do this and the safest way to do it, because obviously the safety in travel is our priority. So the conversation has been ongoing. We've been discussing this, as I said, not only for those 4 border points, but also for seaports. We're having a conversation about cruise tourism returning, and there's ongoing discussion. We had early in the year a tourism recovery task force where this discussion began. We have a cruise tourism task force. So all of this is ongoing. The Ministry of Health has a significant amount of requirements that we have included in the protocols and the standard operating procedures in order to make this work safely. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, and the advice of the Ministry of Health would be the main information that we consider. So things like ensuring that the travelers have negative tests to enter the country is one of the first requirements. Ensuring that travelers have a reservation at a gold standard hotel is another requirement. And they also have to be transported by gold standard tour operators. And these are all stringent measures that are based on protocols that are in place currently at the Philip Wilson International Airport.
Sorry, if I could just, because I don't want us to get too much into what will take place at the border. I still want to understand or help bring some clarity to the why and how the decision was made. clearly, we are aware that the medical community specifically have pointed out many concerns about the reopening of the land borders, specifically because of the situation of COVID in Quintana Roo as well as Petén. But before we get to that, explain to me how the decision is made. It's not the Ministry of Tourism that makes this decision. And how do you, who did you make the recommendation to, and what did you have to account for to allow for it to get approved?
So from a Ministry of Tourism standpoint, we have to look at the economic recovery of the situation, and I know that a little bit later in the conversation we'll get into details like numbers, statistics. Bill has all of that in order to share precisely what and the whys, the amount of revenues we're expecting, and all of that. Yeah. It's a decision, or it was a recommendation made by the Ministry of Tourism based on the fact that we need to move toward economic recovery. And we have been doing that with the increases in arrivals at the airport, and adding the element of travel through the land borders is very important for us to get to that place where we need to get in terms of tourism recovery. Tourism recovery, of course, is the same as, or a very important role to play in economic recovery. Mm-hmm. So how do we get to that point? We look at what we need to do, and we make a recommendation to Cabinet by way of a Cabinet paper that all ministries do that. Ministries make recommendations or requests to Cabinet based on what is needed. So we do that based on discussions that have taken place with all of our partners. Immigration in particular was a very important one, and health. When that recommendation was made, in fact, we've been looking at Cabinet papers for several months. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get automatically approved. There's always a concern. There's always a return. Let's see what we can do differently. What do we need to do? And it got to the point middle of May where the decision was agreed to, and it was accepted that this is the way that we need to move forward. So no, the ministry does not make that decision. The ministry implements the decision that is made at the Cabinet level. Our minister, of course, represents in Cabinet, and as the Minister of Tourism, he would make the recommendation, and based on that approval, we implement. So that's where we're at this point.
Yeah. And so, as you noted, a part of being able to get the approval was to ensure that protocols could be put in place at the borders itself to ensure safety. I know Javier is with us. He's at the Benque border. He can talk to us a bit about the preparation process that you guys have been through so far.
Yes, Marlene, the preparation has been quite intense. The Ministry of Tourism has ensured that the safety of Belize, will be there. And I can assure Belize that it will be. For instance, the Ministry of Health is leading this venture. What we have done at the border is whenever somebody comes in, the first people they will meet is going to be a screening process done by the Ministry of Health. Mm-hmm. The Ministry of Health will determine whether that person is good enough to enter Belize or not. What do I mean by that? If you have a PCR test, a negative PCR test, 72 hours prior to coming into Belize, you will be allowed to come in, of course, following other protocols like using your face mask and 6 feet separation and other things like this. If somebody is positive with COVID, the Ministry of Health will decide, you cannot enter Belize. We also have the Customs Department, the Immigration Department, also very prepared. They have all the knowledge of what to do. Another very big requirement is a gold standard hotel and a gold standard transport operation that will have to pick you up. You will have to have proof of the solid documents of this as well before you are accepted to pass through that border into Belize. It's going to be very tight. It's not going to be very easy for anybody to just come in. We will also have the Belizeans that will come in from abroad. Mm-hmm. And if a Belizean comes in, and if in case, let me go on the negative side first, if in case that Belizean there would be positive, then of course the Ministry of Health will kick in. They will be isolated, and when they're isolated, then of course they will have to be transported to a gold standard provider for quarantine. So it's not going to be quite an easy process for anybody entering the nation. We're going to be there. The Border Management Agency will lead this venture. We're going to be there all the time. And of course, the Ministry of Health is going to be doing that very intense screening. And of course, Customs and Immigration are going to be there in full support. So that, and BAHA, again, BAHA is going to be there, and the police present at the border all the time to ensure that this process is done diligently.
All right, Javier, so that's for the land borders. Explain to us how it will work now if persons are coming to Belize, let's say from Livingston, Guatemala. They're going to come over by boat, and say, for instance, someone is positive for COVID. Do we just turn the vessel back with them on board? How does that part work?
That's a very good question. But at the same time, I'll throw this to the CEO. I'm going to give her that respect. I'm in Bengueville, El Carmen. I can tell you about us. I can tell you about all the borders. But I'm very certain that we do have plans for this if this would happen.
Can you expand if there's anything on it, CEO?
Yes, Isani. As I mentioned earlier, we're focusing in the first instance on the north and the west. So all of our standard operating procedures have been focused on those two border points. We are not at the point yet where we have elaborated the standard operating procedures for San Pedro and Punta Gorda. Those will come next. Our focus is on these two border points, which is why the others are not open yet, and we haven't announced a date yet for those two.
Looking at the protocols that are expected at the land border, they're very similar to what we see at the PGIA. The difference, though, would be that, especially for air travel, there are some checks that are being done beforehand with the airlines themselves. We don't have that luxury at land borders if people are coming even through public transportation or private transportation. How do you ensure that when people arrive at the border, it doesn't become just more of doesn't become a black eye situation where someone has to figure out what they'll do because they test positive?
You want me to take that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so indeed, there are differences between the international airport and the land borders. Currently, we have a lot more traffic coming in at the PGIA than we will have at either of the land borders. So there's more social distancing, there's more, there are actually more stringent protocols in place at the land borders compared to the international airport. For example, currently, if you are a vaccinated traveler and you have had your full vaccination and you're coming in through the international airport, you do not require a test. At the land borders, every single arriving passenger requires a negative test to enter. Also, the window for the test is narrower at the land borders. So at the international airport, you need a test within 96 hours, whereas at the land border, it needs to be within 72 if it's a PCR. If it is a rapid antigen test, at the international airport, it will be accepted within 48 hours of arrival, whereas at the land borders, it needs to be within 24 hours of arrival. So the Ministry of Health has insisted on more stringent measures at the land borders simply because we can implement those a little bit differently than we can at the airport. Now, you're asking what happens if there is a positive case, and that is something that we're looking at. Currently, we have said that if there is a positive case arriving, or if somebody tests positive on arrival at either land border, that they would not be allowed entry. But we also know that the reality of that situation is, what if it's late? You know, we're looking at all of the situations. So the SI has actually made allowances for the situation where a traveler can be put into quarantine on arrival. So we have a backup plan for that, but the intention is to suggest that they cannot enter if they test positive. And then we have a backup plan if that doesn't work.
Okay, before we move further, can you give me some insight as to how many tourists who have entered, foreign visitors who have entered the country, have tested positive upon arrival? How often does it happen?
It's a very low number, Marlene. It's almost immaterial compared to the number of passengers that we have coming in. I don't know that we have exactly those numbers, but when I was asking that question to Health the other day, I think we were talking about a couple of people test positive on arrival per week, and some of them aren't even tourists, some of them are Belizeans. Most of our tourists come in with negative tests already, or they're vaccinated. Many of the people that are being tested at the airport are Belizean travelers. And currently, if a Belizean tests positive at the airport, they're asked to go to their home to quarantine. In the case of tourists, they need to be quarantined in a specific approved quarantine hotel or a gold standard hotel. So I want to emphasize the fact that for tourists in particular, all of the protocols are more stringent, because we're trying to the tourism industry in no way wants to see lockdowns. We want to see the relaxation of measures, and we want to see things open up. So I have noticed that the tourism industry in particular has been very careful about protocols. The private sector has done that. You may have seen some exceptions to that where some situations don't work exactly as they should, but for the most part, the tourism situation is very much under control. And throughout Belize, I mean, even with our local numbers, everything has been kept low thanks to the good work of the Ministry of Health and all of our citizens who have been responsible in addressing this. The vaccination is going to be an important component, and for the tourism industry, we have emphasized the importance of the industry becoming vaccinated.
Let's get Abil in on the conversation at this point. What does this mean for the tourism industry from your perspective as the CTO, Abil?
Good morning, Isani. I think a question Marlene had asked earlier about what's the significance of the traffic that goes through the borders, and I think it's very important to highlight. Pre-COVID, the borders were bringing in about 23% of our arrivals, international arrivals. Out of that 23%, about 60 to 65% of those arrivals primarily were from European countries. And these European travelers are your budget travelers, are your travelers that visit destinations like Ikaker, and they're the ones who bring businesses to the small, the micro and the medium enterprises in our industry. And so they are a very important part of the economy where it relates to tourism. And I think we cannot highlight that more. In fact, that was one of the principal reasons why, from a tourism point of view, the request for the reopening of borders was made. From a more macro point, when we look at what's happening around us, from a tourism and economic point of view, the last report from the World Tourism Organization mentioned that over 70% of the countries worldwide have reopened their borders at minimum to travel and trade. And what that means is that many of our competitors around us have also been open for quite some time. Now, in tourism, we are all looking at, how fast can we recover? And one of the things that we are looking at is that this year in 2021, the threshold for recovery for globally is that countries should reach around 40 to 50% of the pre-COVID arrival numbers as a part of the recovery process. What we have seen is that some countries are well on their way to that, but other countries, are falling behind. In regards to Belize, I see you just cut to the PGIA. We are seeing some very optimistic numbers there, but PGIA by itself will not get us to the threshold where we can see that Belize's tourism industry is healthy, back on the road to recovery. We need that element, that segment of our travel that comes to the land borders, because as I mentioned, the European traffic principally would use those as a means to visit not only Belize but the other parts of the region.
Sorry, Abel, if you could just update us there. You said some countries are on their way to the target and some countries have fallen short. Where does Belize rank? What percentage are we in terms of what is expected?
Well, we are anywhere between 20 to 25% back. So we're actually seeing our numbers being very positive for the summer, for travel, and even more so for the winter season that's coming, especially with the addition of airlift. So we are on our way. But when we run our projections, without the land borders, we will fall short about 10 to 16% of being at least around the 40 to 50% recovery rate. And so what that means is that, tourism is like any other business. It's really a competition. It's a realm of competitiveness. And so if we want to regain the level of competitiveness that we had pre-COVID, which was at an all-time high, we need to ensure that we are at least giving us the chance to do so. Yeah. So that's from a strategic point where we're coming from, and hopefully that brings some clarity to why we're looking at the border reopening at this time.
All right, so what we'll do at this point, we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we return, we will continue our conversation on the opening of the land borders. Stay tuned.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Trimming the hedges and overgrown trees, packing food supplies, ensuring that you have medical supplies and important documents are all part of your hurricane preparations. But what about your home insurance? An insurance policy with RFNG Insurance gives you the confidence that your home and possessions are protected when a natural disaster strikes. Include RFNG in your hurricane plans and join the thousands of Belizeans who have learned why it pays to get it right. RFNG Insurance is a Roden company.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
Hello, Belize. You may not be aware that new travel requirements set in place by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangriga, Placencia, and Hopkins. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott rapid test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at Make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
And we're back, and if you're just tuning in, we are continuing with the conversation talking about the protocols for the phased reopening of land borders. We're joined at this time by the CEO in the Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations, Nicole Solano. We have with us Abel Castaneda, who is the Chief Tourism Officer, and Javier Gutierrez, who is the Site Manager at the Benque border. Now, before we went to the break, Abel, you were breaking down those numbers to explain to us the impact that these borders have on travel into the country, especially for European travelers. We've been told many times before they would spend 2 weeks and move around Central America or Latin America and do so by using the borders. Now, let's dive into the details of how these measures are going to be implemented. I know you were getting into it briefly, CEO, so maybe we can start with you, and then Javier tells us a bit more of the details.
Marlene, so let's talk about the northern border first.
Yes.
Actually, I was informed that we already have one couple, I think it is, at the northern border waiting for opening, which is good news. Yes, we were informed that we also had somebody yesterday, I think, and they asked them to return today. But basically, what will happen is they will come overland, however it is that they arrive. For example, if they're flying in from Mexico City, and they fly from Mexico City, say, to Chetumal, and they get a taxi from Chetumal Airport to the northern border, they would need to have their reservation. Let us use a real example, because I was told that one of them had a booking at Ramon's, right, in San Pedro. So the person would need to prove that they have a reservation at Ramon's. So they get dropped at the border and they first pass through the health checkpoint. So health will check to make sure that they have their negative tests. If they have that, they can move on to immigration, who will check to make sure that they have their reservation. And once they have what they need to enter the country, they can pass through. There's a pre-screening area at the northern border. So once they meet those criteria, they pass through to what you might recognize as the usual place where Customs and Immigration checks the passports. When they get in there, they pass from there. And then they would then need to get into a gold standard approved transportation, whether it is a taxi or a tour operator. And they would then be transferred, for example, to the airstrip in Corozal, for example. And Tropic Air or Maya, they're both gold standard, would then transfer them over to San Pedro, after which they would be picked up by their hotel and stay in their gold standard hotel. So that's an example of the flow. I know you might want more details in terms of the SOPs at the actual border point, and Javier can go into that.
Go ahead, Javier.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just follow the same pattern CEO used. They are allowed to enter the gates of Belize at the western border, and it's going to be the very same at the northern border. We're going to have two people from medical department. These people will ask all the necessary questions to the foreign traveler about COVID, and if they have their PCR test of the 2 hours prior. If they don't, then of course they're sent to the waiting area, where then the Ministry of Health will apply. They will give testing there too. If they're found negative, then immediately they will be taken into the building. At this moment, all of this is happening outside the building, the customs building. They will be escorted into the building from this point exactly, they will be taken to the inside of the border building where then the immigration department will meet them. Immigration will then ask them for the documentation for their stay. Their stay has to be a gold standard hotel or a resort. When all that is finished, they're passed over to the customs department that is very protected too. These people are protected with all the necessary prevention from, you know, the separation between guests and immigration, custom, Baja, etc. We have that protection for them. When customs gives them the okay, the search is done, they are taken then outside the building. Now, outside the building, the border management agency staff will be waiting for them. If their transportation has been accepted to come in, then of course, our staff up at the border building will go through the checking of that vehicle again. What do I mean? Is that they will have to have decals. The BTB will give the gold standard operators decals to prove that they're gold standard. If they show that, then of course that means that they're one step there. We will open the van and make sure that we have all the necessary cleanliness and all the other qualities that the gold standard transport has to have. And then, you know, we will give the okay. The guests are put in and then taken out of the property. There is no other vehicles that are going to be accepted at the border point area or inside the area if they're not gold standard, apart from the staff that work at the border. So the border is going to be properly protected. One other thing that I must mention, the Belize border management staff is 100% vaccinated, and that was not mandatory. I must say that. Our staff was not mandatory. We did not force them to do that. It all came through patience and education. And it was their choice to do that, but we're lucky because, you know, people want to work and they want to keep safe as well. We all want to keep Belize safe.
How does it work for buses that are going to be coming over the border?
There, at this point, we are not accepting any vehicle from outside to come into Belize up to this point. Whenever the tourism industry or whenever the ministry, along with health, decides that we can get to that next phase, then that will be done. For right now, the guests are going to be walking through the gates of the border. We have a gate that separates the border for quite a distance.
Yeah.
We have a walkway that leads these people onto the border point where the checkpoint will be by health. And of course, we have also placed all our floor decals and 6 feet separation. We have also put signs on the walls that, you know, to remind people to keep 6 feet apart, to keep washing their hands, and as well to wear their masks. We are also going to have our staff spraying people's hands. We're going to be having an automatic sanitizer at the entrance and at the outlet of the border points, arrival and departure, where you're going to be putting your hand, the sanitizer will come out, and that instrument will also test your temperature immediately. Okay, so everything is modern, it's going to be automatic, and like I said, we have all put the emphasis on the safety of Belize.
So no buses, but
I prayed for COVID, but I am certain that we will be safe.
But so you said no buses, but what about those vans, especially at the Benque border? We know that sometimes travel agencies or travel companies have small vans. They're like private transportation that bring people across the border. Are those included?
No, Marlene. People are going to be walking through.
So they literally have to have transportation arranged to pick them up on the Belize side of the border. Approved.
Gold standard transportation. They'll be there waiting on their people when they come in.
Okay. Can I comment here,
yes,
Marlene? Sure. I just want to say that we know that it will take some time, similarly to the airlines. It will take some time for the buses to start to come back. It doesn't happen immediately. They have been waiting patiently for the announcement that the Belize borders would open so they can start the plan and start to put those excursions together. Remember, we're in very close communication as well with the private sector. The Hotel Association in particular has been very instrumental in helping us to understand the flow of those travelers to their hotels. We made to understand that it will take some time before those buses begin to have regular runs. So it's not going to happen immediately. It will give us that chance to test the protocols and as I have been saying, these protocols will evolve over time the same way that they did at the international airport. So what you will see on day one is not necessarily what you will see, a month from now. We will have to adjust as we go, and depending on the situations that we face, we make those changes, no?
Yeah. And looking at the, as was outlined, it is only foreign visitors. So if there's a Belizean who lives in Guatemala or Mexico who wants to visit, or if there's a Guatemalan or Mexican who wants to visit and stay at a home, they're not allowed to do so.
Yeah. Well, I want to remind as well that Belizeans have been coming in across the borders. Yes. So any Belizean that comes in, I think that they ask that you get special permission from immigration for departures, for special situations like medical and other. Yeah. Belizeans who come to the border can come in. They cannot be turned away. They do have to meet those requirements of testing, etc., and they can come in and stay with family and friends. In the first phase, tourists cannot. Tourists cannot stay with family and friends. Tourists have to be booked at a Gold Standard hotel, but it could be any nationality. Okay. So it could be someone who is coming in for recreational purposes, who is booked at a Gold Standard hotel and moves with a Gold Standard tour operator. It doesn't matter. In fact, we welcome our tourists from Mexico, and we welcome our tourists from Guatemala as well, whether they're residents or other nationalities living in those countries. Yeah. That is fine,
But that's also one of the areas of concern when we look at the COVID numbers, especially just across the border. About put it into perspective for me, how many of these travelers who come through land borders are actually from the neighboring countries? Isabel, still with us?
Yes, hello,
okay.
Good morning.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I can get those numbers. I don't have it on me right now. What I can say is that, for instance, already we have traffic coming in from these countries. The PGIA, for instance, receives daily flights from Guatemala City, from Cancun, and so we already have some true flow of traffic in that regard. But also, one of the things that we are looking at is that how can we ensure that the populace from across the border maintain the same level of responsibility in their travel over to Belize. And so what we're doing is that we're mobilizing a campaign of information sharing with the communities on the border areas in both the Guatemalan side and on the Mexican side, for them also to understand that it is not a true sort of free-for-all opening of the borders at this point, that there are significant restrictions that they must abide by. And so we believe that if we do so, we can also deter any particular citizen from those countries that may not be willing to uphold the different requirements or regulations that we have.
So what you're saying, sorry, just to get some additional clarity, what you're saying is that we do have flights coming in from Guatemala at the moment, and we do have flights coming in from Mexico.
Correct. We have Tropic Air flying in from Cancun. Yes. We have TAG Airlines from Guatemala that comes in from Guatemala City on a daily basis, and these flights bring in anywhere between, the Tropic Air would bring in around 12 persons per flight, and the one from Guatemala can bring up to 50 persons per flight. And so, we have had those with us for quite some time now, and those have been a part of the general population of travelers coming into the country for quite some time. And also, as CEO had mentioned, we haven't really seen any sort of spike or mass instances of positive cases at the airport. I also want to mention a very important aspect too, that when we reopen the, not tourism, but when the country reopened the Corozal free zone, we also put the systems that were put into place were very similar to what we are looking at right now. And currently, our understanding at the free zone, for instance, is receiving 600 to 700 vehicles per day. of Mexicans from Quintana Roo and different states coming into the free zone. And at this point, because of the strict measures that are there also has not been any instances of infection and all of that. So I think we have to look at it from that point of view and understand that the system that is put into place is going to be our best, one of two of the best bets in terms of ensuring that our populace remains safe. The second one would be vaccination. I saw the last figures that we're still around 20-25% vaccination in Belize, and from the tourism sector, we from the beginning have been encouraging our workers to consider taking that vaccination because it allows us to also have that ease of mind that we are also protected. So those are some of the elements that I think we have to consider. But as we have been saying, the borders really have not been closed. We are now adding this additional element, but we are very happy to see that the systems that are put into place, as has been described, are even more stringent or even more strict. And so I think we would be in a good place. And at the end of the day, we stand guided by our colleagues at the Public Health Department.
Bill, you brought up a very important point, and I wanted to bring that question over to the CEO, talking about the vaccination uptake for the tourism industry. Where are we now, and what are the efforts to be able, whatever number it is, if it's not 100%, it's a weakness for the industry. We've seen where in other parts of the Caribbean, the leaders have gone beyond just asking people to volunteer. They're also talking of being able to tell people that if they don't get vaccinated, they'll ask to work from home or perhaps won't be able to get employment. Where are we in Belize?
Well, I'm sure you recall, Marlene, that we had lobbied for 8,000 vaccines in the beginning to be allocated to the tourism industry. I am informed that close to 70% of those have already been taken up by people in the tourism industry. That doesn't mean you have other people who work on the front line who may have come in under other categories when the Ministry of Health was open only in categories. But we know that we are anywhere between, I think it's something like 65 to 70% of our allocation, those people have gotten at least their first dose. So it's a high percentage for the industry. And lately we've seen additional people understand that they have to become vaccinated, but not only for the industry itself. We are interested in making sure that the communities and the destinations also get vaccinated, because that's the only way to assure work. It's the only way, and people realize that, they're beginning to realize that. Even some of the people who didn't want or were skeptical in the beginning, they realize that in order to work, they need safely, and to be safe, they need to be able to access the vaccine and protect themselves and their families. So I think I think there is resistance. There's resistance all around, but more and more I'm seeing specifically within the tourism industry where people are realizing, I don't want to have to test every time I go to handle a cruise passenger. In fact, in the cruise industry, they are requiring or they are requesting that their tour operators in the destinations are vaccinated. Harvest Key has informed us that only vaccinated vendors will be allowed on the island. So people realize the importance of it. They know that if they want to work and if they want to be safe, they need to get vaccinated.
Can we segue, now that you've mentioned the issue of cruise tourism? I know that on Friday, the Minister of Tourism spoke on the schedule for the return of cruise ships to Belize. Can you expand on that in terms of the discussion that you have been having with the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association and what that's been like?
Yes, we've been in constant communication with FCCA and the lines over the past few months. Of course, bringing cruise or the return of cruise is important to a lot of our small operators. And we're monitoring what is happening at CDC. There was a movement for cruise lines to operate over out-of-home ports in the Caribbean. That might be changing as CDC continues to evolve and to change their conditional seal orders. We're seeing changes almost on a daily basis where the options are opening. So Norwegian Cruise Lines had indicated initially that they would be coming back in August. With the changes in cruise departing out of the U.S., some of those the scheduling might change. So we're waiting for confirmation of exactly what the schedules would be, but Carnival as well has indicated return of ships July, August. So we are looking forward to that, and in order to be ready, we have to make sure that all of our tour operators, tour guides, destinations, attractions, even the archaeological sites, that we are prepared and that we implement those gold standards in order to receive the ship. So that is that is our focus now. No?
Yeah. And just looking back at the cross-border travel, what's the communication been like with travel agents who usually assist in this regional travel where people move across borders?
Well, as Abil mentioned earlier, the communication has been most important to be able to inform people. The only way you can have tourism is if you have tourists entering, whether it is by air, by land, by sea. So they need to know how can they get here, and the travel agents in the same fashion need to know how to advise their clients. So it's been an ongoing communication process through all of our outlets, whether it's digital or personal communication, obviously using a lot of the virtual platforms to communicate and let people know what is happening. Even over the last few months, with the changes at the airport, we've had to upgrade and continue to inform, and it includes also communication with the airlines. As you know, before there was a requirement to download the app, and the airlines would not let a passenger on the flight if they did not have their app downloaded. That has since changed. So it's been a constant evolution and a constant communication with all of our partners, and that is something that we continue to do for all points of entry.
Yes. Now, before we allow you all to leave, let's just talk about some of the indicators that you're seeing at this point in time. I think Bill mentioned it a bit earlier, that when you look forward towards the end of the year, the winter travel, there are already very promising numbers coming out from some of the major destinations. Do you want to update us on that? Abil?
Yeah, sure. So what we are seeing so far is that, for instance, the summer travel, because this particular season, especially January to about March, the first quarter of the year, still saw some very low performances worldwide in terms of tourism because of the various shifts and changes in restrictions as the pandemic has evolved. We are seeing now that since the European region is now reopening back, since the US now seems to be also reopening back and having major liberal changes to their restrictions from the CDC, similarly with Canada, etc., we are seeing much more interest in travel globally. In fact, the airline industry is now looking at increasing significantly their cost to travel around the world. But that is a great indicator to show you that the demand is absolutely there, especially for the summertime, and which is a little bit different than what we're used to if you really look at it. I mean, the summertime going into like August, September, and even to the end of July usually has traditionally been the low season for the country and for the region. That seems to be a little bit, at least for this year, will be a little bit different because of there's so much pent-up demand that exists in our main markets. Moving over now to the winter time, that is where the usual demand is. And what we're seeing is that our airlift is continuing to be strengthened. We're getting new airlines into the country, and there's interest of others. And so all of these things are very positive indicators for an industry that was literally just shut down overnight. And I think that many countries now are trying their best to see, initial projections were saying that we won't recover until 2024, 2025 in some cases. Yeah. But many countries are now seeing the light that most likely 2022, maybe early 2023 will be the time period is shortening, so that there's great optimism in the tourism sector worldwide, and especially in this region. I must say that in the case of the Latin American and Caribbean region, this region is the one that is rebounding the best worldwide at this moment.
Why is that?
We are recovering about 6 points better than other areas. And the reason for it has to be with the source markets that we have that are being able to the Americans and in particular are able to travel a bit more now. But also it has to do with the reopening strategies of the different countries. Now we still have some countries that are not reopened, but there have been many other countries that have been much more liberal in their restrictions, and that has allowed for travel to really continue and be boosted in this particular region.
Yeah. Okay. And CEO, before we close, I just want to have you address clearly, we've been hearing from the medical community a very loud opposition to this reopening. And of course, that call is geared towards government in general, but also to the Ministry of Health and whether or not we're adequately prepared. From your standpoint, what do you say to the public about the necessity of this move and also the safety that is involved?
Thanks, Marlene. I really do want to encourage everybody to look at the positive side of this. I know that there is a lot of fear. I know that there is a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knows what will happen. All of the opinions that have come forward from all sides, not only the medical side, I know that that is one, but there are so many opinions and so many people with different types of expertise that have come and brought their opinions forward. And we need to consider everything, and we need to try to move forward with all of the information that we have. We cannot remain closed. It's not the solution. I don't think that if we remain closed or do not open the borders to tourists, it's any guarantee that we would not have another wave or that we would not have a variant. Even in some of the best situations around the world, we've seen where some of the model situations, they do still have to face the reality of what COVID is. Nobody is saying that there's no guarantee. There's no guarantees going forward. So we need to just move ahead in the safest way that we know. And that's what we're doing. If we need to make a change, we will make a change. Constant monitoring is part of the process. Constant change is part of the process. And so we have to manage the risk. For Belize, it's important, as for all the reasons we've already mentioned. And I think that we're doing the right thing. And I would like to ask the public to consider all of the hard work of all of the agencies on the ground and all of the people who are involved here. We have to believe in our people, and we have to believe that we're doing the right thing. And we have to take personal responsibility as well to keep ourselves safe, and understand that whatever we face, we make the adjustments. So. And
just lastly, as we close, is there also a contingency plan in place in the event that there is an increase in the number of COVID-19 cases?
Well, that is something that we would be guided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And I think in last week, the minister did mention that if there was a spike or if there was a situation, that drastic measures would be taken in order to address it. So I feel comfortable that constant monitoring is required, and whatever steps need to be taken in order to address any situation that we face, those steps will be taken. The Ministry of Tourism, of course, will be guided by the Ministry of Health, and any decision that is made at the cabinet level, our minister as well will make those indications to us at the ministry. So we will implement. I mean, whatever is necessary, we will adjust.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, CEO Abil and Javier, and best of luck. Stay safe.
Pleasure. Thank you, Marlene. Thanks for having us.
Take care.
We will take our next commercial break, and when we return, it's to discuss food packaging and the labeling campaign. Stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor, and you'll be 35% more productive. At Foltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Foltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
With the touch of a finger, we can easily unlock our phones and securely gain access to our data. This technology is called biometrics, and the Social Security Board is introducing fingerprint recognition to make transactions and handling of your sensitive data secure, fast, accurate, and convenient. Is your identity safe? Fingerprint recognition will keep your Social Security record secure and confidential while making your access fast and easy. It protects your identity. Is your name a common one? Fingerprint recognition uses your unique characteristics, ensuring your hard-earned benefits go directly to you, the rightful owner. Tired of all the paperwork? Fingerprinting makes this hassle-free. Your convenience and your information security is our priority. Fingerprint recognition coming soon. Social Security at your fingertips.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
Hello, Belize. You may not be aware that new travel requirements set in place by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or a documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangrega, Placencia, and Hopkins. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott Rapid Test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at Make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
Good morning, sweetie. It's time for school.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
We're back, and we're moving into our second conversation for today. We are joined by Policy Advisor for Healthy Caribbean Coalition, Nicole Foster, who's joining us this morning from Barbados. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, and of course, Nicole is here to talk about the ongoing front labeling campaign. It is currently up for vote, the regulations that is. And it is online, and you're trying to get the education going as to why this is important for us in the region.
Yes, absolutely. So what is going on right now is that CARICOM has gone through a process of revising its existing standards for prepackaged foods. And what they've done is to include as part of that revision front of pack warning labels. And the scheme that they have in the draft standard right now is one that uses black octagonal warning symbols that basically indicate very clearly, quickly, and accurately to individual consumers and children, whoever is looking at the package, whether it's high in fat, salt, or sugar. Yeah. And today is the day, this is the day that votes are supposed to go in from our respective national bureaus into the CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality. Exactly. So you see there the standard that we as health professionals are pushing for.
How important is this campaign to raise public awareness on the warnings that are coming on these labels?
This campaign is critical. Really, front of pack warning labels are an important part of our response to the NCD's crisis that we have throughout our region. And what the evidence shows us is that our NCD epidemic is unfortunately being driven by unhealthy diet. Of the various modifiable risk factors, it is diet that is killing us, basically. And so front of pack warning labels are basically a quick, easy, and accurate way for consumers to be able to identify those products that have an excess of nutrients that are linked to the chronic non-communicable diseases that are such a bane within our region. And so it's really important for us to get everybody on board and for them to signal really strongly and overwhelmingly to our heads, to our leaders, to our standards bureaus, most importantly in the context of this campaign, that this is the system we want. As consumers, we have a right to know what is in our food. We have a right to be healthy, and we think that this is an important part of moving down that road.
Now, let's talk about what effects a front label warning on a package should and would have. Because most products come with a nutrition fact somewhere listed on the product, but this is different.
Yes, this is very different. And this is why it's really, so it's useful that you ask about the evidence, because this entire campaign is premised on evidence and conflict of interest-free evidence. And across the globe, we've had numerous studies done in Chile, Uruguay, and Mexico, sort of really pointing out that of all the labeling schemes that we have out there, that this one with the octagonal warning labels functions the best in terms of enabling a consumer, a busy mother who just wants to get some food for her kids and get back home to cook, to accurately, quickly, and effectively identify which ones might be problematic.
Yeah.
And Jamaica would have recently done, so PAHO, Jamaica's Ministry of Health and Wellness, and the University of Technology in Jamaica, interestingly, in addition to the global studies, we now have from about 2 months ago, a CARICOM-based study,
yes,
which basically endorsed all the findings that were found within the other countries globally, that this scheme is the one that works best. Because we know when you're looking at that back of label, that nutritional label at the back, you need a degree in dietetics to be able to figure out if it's good or not. And even in terms of some of the other front of pack options, so not doing it on the back, but doing it on the front, as I said, the evidence is saying to us that really the only one that performs well on all the aspects in terms of allowing us to make an informed choice is this octagonal front of pack warning label scheme.
And it's not just the, well, I mean, I guess it's all in connection. It's putting the labels in the front. It's the coloring and location you choose.
Exactly.
But it's also the language. It's very simple.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So my 7-year-old son, a 3-year-old child will be able to immediately look at a package and see front of, you know, if I see 4 big warning labels on a package, that immediately says to me, okay, this is something I need to think about a little bit more carefully. And so really front of pack, this type of front of pack warning labeling is actually powerful in terms of, from an equity point of view, because many of the other schemes require a certain level of sophistication in terms of education and being able to read and interpret. No interpretation is needed with this. You see it, as I said, a 3-year-old will be able to figure out that that's not looking like something that mommy should be buying for me.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a vote that is taking place within CARICOM. Does this mean then that this, whatever the outcome of the decision would be, that we will adopt it across the region in terms of items that are exported or items that are also manufactured for consumption locally?
Okay, so two aspects to that question. So firstly, yes, this is being done as a CARICOM standard. So this is a CARICOM process, and that makes sense. Our problem is a regional problem. It's not unique to Barbados, to Jamaica, to Trinidad. Across the board, the Caribbean, unfortunately, has some of the highest rates of obesity in the world, as well, in particular, childhood obesity. And then also we know that we try to address things at a regional level since we create this single space. So this is being done at a CARICOM level, but then the implementation would still be done individually. So we're just trying to get agreement at the regional level that if you want to introduce a front of pack labeling scheme, this is what is being recommended at the regional level. And then individually states would implement. And then the second part of your question is absolutely, these standards would apply across the board to both domestic and imported products, because it's a health measure. It's not about trade, it's about health. And whether or not the product is produced locally or domestic or imported, it's having the same impact in terms of driving that obesity epidemic, including within our child population across this region. So it's important to have a measure that is non-discriminatory and balanced in its approach, that really gets to the heart of the matter as a health issue, a health problem that we're trying to counteract.
Now, how does this work for imported products, though? So while products that are manufactured within the Caribbean may have the label, for countries, especially like Belize, where we get our imports, it's not necessarily, they're not all from the Caribbean.
Right. So the idea would be that, so as with any, so say for example, currently you get products in from the USA, etc., that already have labels on them. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so the idea would be, and equally you would know that in Belize, I imagine it's the same thing like in Barbados, that we have certain national standards for. So for example, in Barbados, we require that when persons bring in food, that it must have the ingredients not in English. Even if it's in another foreign language, it must be in English. Now that is something that all persons wishing to export to Barbados have to comply with. And so it would be the same thing, either at the level of the exporter themselves, if they're so minded, in terms of already manufacturing in a way where their package incorporates this label, or at the border, stick a sticker on it. We do it all the time for other products. So the responsibility would then be at the local level to ensure that there's the enforcement and the follow through in terms of monitoring of what is coming in to ensure that there's compliance with the standard, assuming that it is adopted at the national level. And I understand from Heather Renaud from the Belize Cancer Society that in fact you all are already getting some of products with the octagonal labels because, for example, they're coming from across your close borders with Mexico and Chile.
Yeah, and they have already implemented the front label. Yes,
and we have seen amazing, really overwhelming and positive results coming out of the adoption of front-to-part labeling in those territories.
Nicole, Healthy Caribbean Coalition has really been an active part of trying to get awareness built about the health concerns that we are facing. Your partner in Belize is Belize Cancer Society, and that is because when you look at obesity and you look at non-communicable diseases, they can be linked to cancer and, of course, to other illnesses that make people end up in hospitals or lose their life. In the Caribbean, there have been many different efforts that have been ongoing. Some include taxing sugar-sweetened beverages. Some include putting restrictions in place in school systems where children don't have access to junk food. Some people even restrict the level of marketing that can be done to children near schools. Talk to us about the efforts that have been implemented and why you think this takes so much time to really get the buy-in.
Yeah, so it's important to emphasize and to appreciate that front-to-part warning labels are, as you said, not a single policy tool. It's part of a suite of measures that CARICOM has endorsed as a multi-tool response to the obesity epidemic and related NCDs epidemic. And so as you quite rightly pointed out, we've had across the territories different levels of uptake as it relates to taxation of sugar-sweetened beverages, imposition of restriction on marketing, etc. But what we're really emphasizing is that FOPL can be an important impetus in this process because, as you said, it does take a while. And so we think that FOP, front-to-part warning labels, can play an important role in providing support to much of these things. For example, if we wanted to think about restricting the sale of products in schools or marketing in the schools, obviously, in the context of a front-to-part warning labeling scheme, we wouldn't have to be worrying about, but how do we determine which ones we choose and which ones we don't choose? Mm-hmm. How do we avoid being, accused of bias? Well, if we have a system that's based on evidence, that's non-discriminatory, that says to us what these products are high in salt, sugar, and fat, then it is a much easier process then to move towards implementation of the types of additional policies that we want to have. Mm-hmm. But in addition, oftentimes we get this pushback about, oh, you just need to educate your public and, people need to take responsibility for their health. And the fact of the matter is that it is almost impossible to make healthy choices because from birth right through to death, we are surrounded by an obesogenic environment. One that is where we are subjected to the power of marketing, issues of cost and culture, all of those things come into play. And so we see front-to-part warning labeling as being an important tool for allowing us to reset, to start to build back better, as we say, for example, in the context of COVID-19, which we have seen the connections between our NCDs levels and mortality and serious illness in the context of COVID-19. So something like front-to-part labeling can really give a strong push to many of these initiatives that we have been trying before, but really need to be brought together and have a common way of looking at which products are we going to be paying particular attention to as opposed to others.
Is it also perhaps an option for manufacturers themselves. If they're tasked with putting 4 or 5 labels on the front of their package, they may reconsider the ingredients that they use or the makeup of the product itself.
Absolutely, and we have seen that in the context. The evidence shows us, so globally we have seen that in the context of Chile and Mexico, etc., as industry has responded to the implementation of this policy, but also to right here in the Caribbean, we have seen in the context of Jamaica, for example, who introduced restrictions on sugar-sweetened beverages in their schools. They have seen some formulation by industry in terms of trying to rethink some of how they produce. And so, you know, it does not have to be necessarily that you just take these products off the market, never to be seen again. Hopefully there are ways in which it stimulates industry to think more critically about the products they're putting on the market, but also too, it creates niche markets. So here in Barbados, for example, we have a lot of people who are pushing natural products, or, you know, products that are minimally processed or no added sugar and those types of things. And so it really does sort of challenge us to think more creatively about what we do and how we cook and what we cook with.
Yeah. Now, we're working in reverse, but let's put this issue into perspective. We are facing, I think you call it an obesity crisis, but where it gets most concerning is our children. And there is data to explain how the Caribbean is doing when it comes to childhood obesity. Tell us a bit about that.
So, childhood obesity, we have some of the highest rates in the world. Our rates are 2 to 3 times that of the global average, and this information I'm taking from the statement from CARPHA, our Caribbean Public Health Agency, the CARICOM Health Arm, in their recent statement for World Obesity Day. So we have some really alarming levels, is as high as 30-something% of our children under the age of 9, I believe it is, in the Bahamas, for example, that are obese or overweight. And this is seriously concerning because we're setting ourselves up for a generation of unwell citizens, citizens who will become, therefore, a serious economic drain on our resources because, you know, not because they don't want to do better, but they are unwell and therefore not able to contribute in the way that we would normally expect them to.
And with obesity rates that high for children, it makes them predisposed, or countries predisposed to a higher population of young adults with NCDs in the very near future.
Absolutely, and we're seeing the evidence. And in fact, the World Obesity Federation in 2019 did in their childhood obesity atlas. So there are some targets that the World Health Organization has agreed in terms of trying to move member states towards. And so we wanted to either cut or halt the to cut our obesity rates by, I believe it's like 25% by the year 2030, something like that, or 2030, or at the very least keep them stable. And the World Federation, the World Obesity Federation, in their 2019 obesity atlas, very concerningly, basically estimated that pretty much none of us were on track to meet that target. That at the rate we were going, I mean, basically the best we were seeing is like we had a 3% chance or 4% chance, depending on the member state in question. So really, really concerning statistics as it relates to childhood obesity. And also, I mean, besides the economics of it, we love our children. We want our children to live their best lives. Can you imagine, you know, sort of the emotional and psychological issues that come along with, you know, being a child and having diabetes, type 2 diabetes, being a child and, you know, having a heart problem, being a child and being unable to participate effectively in school activities, etc., because you're overweight or obese. So, you know, really it is a a very concerning development. And this is why, Healthy Caribbean Coalition and many others are saying the time is now more than ever. We need action now. We need action urgently. And in this regard, I just wanted to point out that in terms of the front-to-part warning scheme that is currently in the standard, the octagonal labels, we actually have overwhelming support across the region. So we have, of course, starting off with CARFA and PAHO, the premier regional health agencies whose mandate it is to guide us in this area. But we've also had the OECS Commission come on board and endorse the standard. UNICEF endorsed this standard. And most recently, currently we have about 350 Caribbean health professionals and over 40 regional organizations, including the Caribbean Association of Dietitians and Nutritionists, various University of the West Indies faculties, including my faculty, the Cave-Hill Faculty of Law, because I'm Deputy Dean in the Cave-Hill Faculty of Law, the Caribbean Policy Development Center. All of these have come on board and publicly voiced their support for front-to-part warning labeling, yes, generally, but specifically that we should have the octagonal high-end warning scheme. And this is because they understand the science, they understand the evidence, they understand the urgency of acting now, and they, like all of us, want us to live our best life, but in particular, our children to live their best lives.
And for others who are watching right now who are in total support of your cause, maybe not a part of these associations that you have noted, how do they get involved?
Okay, so Healthy Caribbean Coalition, if you go on to their website, healthycaribbean.org, there is a big banner right as soon as you go on the website, allowing you to click to show your support for the front-to-part warning labeling campaign. In Belize, there's still some time to get those votes in, to get that support in. You really need, we're really calling on the Belize public, on the parents, the older people, the younger people, everybody. This needs to be a whole of society. We really need, as consumers, to get out there and say to our heads, enough is enough. We deserve better. We want action now. We need front-to-part warning labels as set out in the CARICOM standards. So we encourage you to go to the site, click your support, get that information into your National Bureau of Standards so that they can represent Belize appropriately in the context of the voting process then at the CARICOM level.
All right. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for shedding light and putting this into perspective. Now more than ever.
Now more than ever, we need action and we need front-to-part warning labels. Thank you.
Thank you and stay safe.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up. So stay tuned.
eCash, powered by Belize Bank, makes payment and transfer faster, easier, and more convenient than ever before. I'm John, and I'll be telling you why shopping with a digital wallet is more secure than shopping with cash or checks, and ways you can ensure that your financial information is always secure and private. eCash makes use of modern encryption technology to ensure that your data is always protected. The data is converted into a random set of characters, and the amount of time and computing costs it takes to break modern encryption is near impossible. Your digital wallet is accessible through your mobile device, which employs a variety of security measures such as PINs and passwords, as well as biometric protocols such as your fingerprint or facial recognition, just to name a few. These same protocols protect your digital wallets from hackers and possible theft. If your phone gets lost or stolen and you didn't protect your phone with a PIN, no need to worry, as your username and PIN are required to access your digital wallet. With this in mind, be sure to never share your PIN and password with anyone, even with your friends and family. One of the fundamental benefits of using eCash is that when making purchases, it conceals all your banking information. Think about it. When you make a payment or transfer to someone else, do you want them to be able to see all your banking information? With eCash, your bank account is never exposed since you never pay directly from your bank account. All funds must be transferred into the wallet before you can make purchases. This greatly reduces the amount of risk even if your PIN or password is compromised. eCash also delivers superior accountability. Unlike using cash, every transfer and payment is logged and timestamped in your wallet and can be viewed at any time from your device. It's like having a personal accountant by your side for all your transactions. This, coupled with instant payment, puts you on top of all your finances. No more waiting for your transfers to clear through the banking system or for your payments to be reflected in your account. Rest assured that your eCash balance is always your true balance. While eCash, powered by Belize Bank, was developed with multiple layers of security to make the customer's experience safe and secure, there are some measures that you can take to make sure that your digital wallet is more protected. Always ensure that you download your eCash app from Apple or Google Play Store. Use a different PIN and password for your eCash wallet, which is different from those on other apps or devices. PIN is required upon login to the eCash app. However, if you forget your PIN, you will be able to recover via password. If you forget your password, you will be able to recover via correctly answering your security question. Never share your PIN and login credentials with anyone. Similarly, never lend your phone or device to anyone. Always review your transaction details before confirming payment or transfers. When sending transfers, always ensure to select names from your mobile phone book or type the phone number of the person you know. Transfer money to trusted sources, persons, or retailers. Never accept transfers you don't recognize or expect from numbers you don't know. With eCash, you and your transactions are safe. It's the same wallet you currently have, but better and more secure. The digital payment revolution is here, and it's time to jump on board and welcome the awesome advantages that eCash has to offer for everyone.
2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected.
Okay everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
We're back.
We are back. We're wrapping up our session this morning. The borders, the land borders, that was quite an interesting conversation with the representatives of the tourism sector and of course the Border Management Agency in respect of how they will collectively go about reopening the land borders to tourists only and the protocols that they have put in place to ensure that we have as minimal, if not any, infections entering the country.
Well, you know, it is important to understand what efforts are being put in place. This is a move that has been approved from Cabinet, and so it will proceed, although we do know that the medical community has openly expressed their concerns about allowing for this reopening. And the key reason for that is that there are a significant increase in cases on both of the states that are the boundary with Belize. So I think that's always something to put into perspective. What the Ministry of Tourism was able to point out today was what plan they have in place, what border agencies are going to be implementing, and what their expectation is in terms of the travel that usually comes through the borders.
Yeah.
So it is something that we will continue to monitor. Of course, we are hoping for the absolute best, but nonetheless, we will keep on following and find out how it goes.
And then our second conversation, of course, has to do with front of pack warning labels. That has to do with being able to, as consumers, understand what the contents are of some of the products that we're purchasing.
Absolutely.
And it's important for us to know that, particularly based on various factors, including obesity.
Yeah. And of course, you know, like I think Nicole mentioned it best, where she said COVID has really shown us how these illnesses that we take for granted that are so prevalent in our community, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, these are all some of the persons who were most at risk in the COVID, in the midst of this pandemic. And the reason for that is just the effect that it has on our body. So clearly, understanding our realities as to the number of persons who are obese and facing NCDs, then something has to be done. And even more concerning when we hear the numbers for children and how they're doing. So that is a campaign that continues, and you are encouraged, if you want to show your support, to go to the Healthy Caribbean Coalition website, and you can register your name as in support, so that you can keep on, you can be a part of the push to get front labels, the packages, on packages.
Yeah.
All right, but that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you'd like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, please.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.